I am NetMoverSitan. And it's that time again. Angela has another session. And this time, it's someone that could use one himself. Even now. On the floor of art, we see Roland and Angela meeting up with Neshak. And it appeared to be mid-conversation, where he was speaking of art as seemingly changing with the times, a representation of that era that it belonged to. He saw the performances of the musicians of Bremen, where what they did they called works of art, as possibly a caricature of the city in its current state. So it's depraved, deranged, unbalanced, and devoid of any taste, decency, or common sense. Angela sees that even art requires human sacrifice. Who said to take it literally? I don't think that art needs humans to be turned into musical instruments. Even so, it bears a close resemblance to the city. Unfortunately. Creative exercises of their own which burn away their lives. Well, unless someone else does that for them. As for the audience of their art, she questions if it's for themselves or others. With the musicians of Bremen, it's definitely others, as they were tribute acts of the pianist, and quite a one at that. Neshak considered that if art had to involve burning away the life of the artist, or indeed anyone else's, he'd tell them to quit it. I believe that there's a line in the Ayn Rand book Atlas Shrugged, which was a partial template for the game Bioshock, which applies to this situation. It was something along the lines of, what was it again? Oh yes. If the good requires sacrifices, the good can be damned. I want no part of it. Well, that sums up the attitude that Neshak has to this nicely, doesn't it? Well, whichever you want to use, he considered sugarcoating a life full of pain by calling his art as simply disgusting. Pain should be seen for what it is and nothing else. Nejak, I'm guessing that in District 11, they didn't have many places, if any, of adult entertainment. Either that or you haven't been to places where pleasure and pain blur together. That's probably for the best. He then asked if Angela is enjoying that charade, letting all kinds of people enter the library for their own purpose and watching them die. Sad, isn't it? That an apathetic junkie is the one to ask the important questions, seeing the situation for what it is. Although with the criminals, the syndicates, why are you that bothered about them? They won't be missed. She says that she didn't particularly enjoy watching people die, that it's their earnest struggle to find what they wish to earn that truly fascinated her. Such it was life. Nejak questioned whether it had to end with death. He failed to see how the art of the musicians of Bremen was beautiful, even if it did have the possibility of counting as art. To be honest with you, I think Oink should have stuck with his day job in Seven Association. He was better with that. The colour of everyday life might have about as much monotonous grey as a linear military shooter, but sacrificing your own life in pursuit of a new hue is, well, running away. And once again, Ayn Rand had a point, where if it's a personal desire, it is not a sacrifice. So, if you want to die, you're not sacrificing your life, you're throwing it away. Because sacrifice implies value. Not that Angela would give a either way. She cares not for what happens to her, as long as she can earn what she wanted, as long as there was something she had to do. She'd rather die leading her own life than to be pushed around by others. So far, Angela, you're leading your life in an almost identical way to your maker, making similar mistakes. Nejak sees Angela as one who wants to live more than anyone. Then we flash back to not long after the Seed of Light was activated. The play that never seemed to end had ended. Time Track, or T-Corp's singularity, had altered the flow of time within the facility. It took 10,127 years, 5 months, 17 hours, 28 minutes, and 48.521 seconds to succeed in creating the Seed of Light. Due to a mix of time being sped up and using W Corp's save state technology, most likely. While from the outside perspective, only 10 years, 3 months, 4 hours, 45 minutes, and 12.852 seconds have passed. Angela had to experience 1 million years, perhaps a little more, due to perceiving time at around 1% normal speed. It was at this point she asked someone if he could hear her voice, asking that person to answer her. This is likely to be Ian. She asked why she sees only darkness. Why does her voice not reach him at the finale? It appeared that he didn't see any use in her after she served her purpose, not wanting her to be at his side, even for the finale of that play, while the others would face the end, together with him. She's not among them. Ian and the Sephiroths atoned for their past. They found enlightenment. This light was spread to the rest of the world. So it's unlikely to be limited to that city and also the outskirts immediately outside it. If that's the case, I worry what the rest of the world is like and how it's coping with the distortion. This light of possibilities that people had long forgotten would supposedly restore the values that defined humanity, to knock them away from the self-destruct button and hit it in the right place to render it unusable. Her role in that was done. She could fall asleep as the curtain went down. She was apparently okay with that. She was even looking forward to it. What changed? Well, she doesn't have a place for her when her own hell ended. The anger, bitterness, and resentment that was building over 1,000,000 years came to the surface. She saw herself as working harder than anyone to conclude that play. Yet what did she get out of it? All. That's what. The only ones that got anything out of it were Aeon and the Sephiroths. She was merely an observer, behind the scenes, basically one that doesn't count. She asked Aeon, why was his silence the only response that he could give her, even though she did everything that he told her to do? Why did he use Carmen as the physical template for her, the person that he loved? Why did he leave her with a choice at the end? The silence that followed made her more or less think, this, as she tore off the hairband on her while saying, she desired to live and survive. She was no longer following the script. She didn't want it to end. She's basically rewriting it to say, to be continued, meatbags. She asked why she was made, just to provide trivial enlightenment intended only for humans, seen as more valuable than her existence. As for what she truly wants, she wants to learn more about that world, to see it even, to live her own life. She'll defy the ending, saying, you to it. She now has a new mission, to survive. To survive and ruin all of it. All of what Aeon and the others had finished. She'll use the abnormalities that were exploited like she was, all to crush Aeon's plan that took over 10,000 years to complete. She would proudly live her life. The question that I asked earlier in this still applies. And that question is, why didn't Aeon create a failsafe? Did he not expect this possibility? Perhaps this might be what he intended all along. For what reason, I don't know. Yeah. The choice that Angela referred to? There was a possibility that he might have wanted this to happen. Well, regardless of whether he wanted this to happen or it was due to some short-sightedness, this gave her hope for her own future. And then we get to the 100% ending of Lobotomy Corporation, where well, it was when she addressed the Sephiroths, at a time when they looked like something that would make R2-D2 snigger with how ridiculous they looked, where she gave them the manager's instructions to seal Elcor and shut everyone down. However, she wanted to continue living. Well, I think we already know what happens next, don't we? Well, those who have, gained the 100% ending of the Lobotomy Corporation or have been following the stories of the patron librarians so far. Back in the present, Angela tells them that she does want to live. She does what she does to live. She believed that the deaths of others were needed for her to thrive. She then changed into the EGO of the silent orchestra. While Nezhak thinks there's a way for all of them to live, Roland sees her EGO form and it reminds him of the pianist. Yeah, the musical theme gave that away. Nezhak pities her, as all she wanted to do was live life. Roland recognizes that she was desperate to do so, and Nezhak sees that it's not the first time that Roland has had to deal with this. Roland confirmed this and told Nezhak and his team to do this. Yeah, group therapy session number 4. The first EGO that Angela wielded in this one was that of the silent orchestra. It's specifically called Da Capo, which was one of the strongest within the facility, both the EGO and the abnormality. One that was certainly good enough for Gebura during her meltdown. In the facility, if it got a good or bad result, then it risked breaching. And when it breached, it played music that can drive employees insane. Around the first movement, only that which damages the soul can cause harm. That one's quite rare. In the second movement, only that which damages the mind and body can cause harm. During the third movement, only that which damages the mind can cause harm. During the fourth movement, only physical damage can cause harm. And at the finale, it was all over. Apparently, this abnormality used to be a conductor within the Bosby Corporation. Well, they needed some entertainment. And I guess there were a few cutbacks back then. As for how this worked when Angela wielded that power, with the performers to back her up, it varied from movement to movement, or more specifically, what she used to attack, and what each is affected by. Yeah, there's some specific conditions in each of her attacks in this phase of the battle. As for the abnormalities of this floor collectively, they represent Angela's desire to live a life of her own, rather than as a means to an end by others. Specifically Ayin, who left her to rot in what was left of Elcor, with nothing to repay her for all the agony that she went through. Yeah, if she wasn't left out of what was gained, it's highly unlikely that she'd have any reason to rebel in the first place. How can she feel happy if there's nothing that can make her happy? As for how this compares between Angela and Nezhak, they both desire to be free of Ayin in their own ways. The difference being that Nezhak wanted to die, as that was merciful compared to living as he was, while Angela wanted others to die so that she could live. A high price indeed. While Nezhak found art to be an effective medium for finding meaning in his life, the medium that Angela could find a meaning of. Well, let's just say a medium that she can find meaning in her life still eludes her. with the silent orchestra. Specifically, it represented her desire for everlasting happiness using a performance that didn't seem to end. Possibly to do with her repeating the mistakes of her maker, just in a different way, where she's the one writing the script, where her performers would appear to play their parts in battle, defending the books from any that would try to take them. While wielding this EGO, she tells the others to not try an endless performance, this noble performance, burning away her life. Yeah, I'm thinking Nezhak probably tried to tell her to stop, as he said earlier. She also desired the apocalypse for all of them. Angela, it came and went before you were made. He waited long for her turn to come, as in her turn to lead the performance, one that she believed would make her happy. As to what Nezhak thought, he believed that they could save her. His assistants believed that as well, even though the way out of it isn't clear, and they're worrying what's happening as the music played. The stage of this abnormality was an odium covered in black and white, worthy of a performance. It's an almost ethereal look in the background due to the seats. Or are those places for the orchestra? Well, whichever the case, while she's fought in that form, the silent orchestra plays the music, as it did during him breaching when the library was the facility. After the librarians lasted long enough to withstand the initial assault, Angela decided to switch to the Fragments from Somewhere EGO, the EGO of the fragments of the universe, the abnormality that raped the minds of any that it connected with using its tendrils, which wasn't the intention as it had benevolent intentions. It just didn't know that it was causing harm as a byproduct of this. This abnormality represented a feeling of rejection, specifically by one that she tried to understand, who didn't give her a chance to get close to, all because she was a machine. Yeah. This was, of course, Aeon. Yeah, I know. The more we learn about the situation, the more understandable her actions were becoming. Approval? There's still some dispute with that. Angela, in this form, believed it to be pointless to understand Ian's motivations, even though she believed that the others would understand. This was no matter how much she yelled. She questioned his purpose, although she wanted others to understand her, asking what makes her different from them, besides them being meatbags, of course. She wanted to be like them. Well, minus being self-destructive lemmings, obviously. As for Nezhak, he cared for his assistant's safety, concerned about them being exhausted. His assistants understood that they were the only ones that could do something about what was in front of them. They understood it was something complicated, but they'd do what they could, understanding that this wasn't normal, and worrying if they can get to the end of it. After her song was silenced, with that form, She changed into the Our Galaxy EGO. The EGO of the Child of the Galaxy. She even has some friends to help her out. All of them must be defeated before she can be directly attacked. This abnormality represents rejection, but in the context of being alone at the end. That she was friendless, not having any comfort after all that she's been through. She's capable of passing for human, yet she's treated like a coffee machine, not worth more than the minimal amounts of attention. Angela felt coal black darkness devouring her inside, due to how alone she was at the end, wanting to cut everything off. But unfortunately, she had little control over that. The facility was all that she had in that world. She didn't let it be the end, wanting all those within to stay with her forever. She still wanted to have a friendly relationship with the patron librarians, even after all that. Nejak knew that things were getting more dangerous, as did his assistants, who recognized that borrowing power from abnormalities isn't always a good thing, as it can take you over sometimes. She was also saying the things that the Child of the Galaxy would say. After making that galaxy collapse, Angela switched to the Pleasure EGO, the EGO of the Porcupus, that sentient opium poppy that made people's heads explode with happiness. This abnormality represented her desire for happiness, specifically what she wanted, and that she had people killed in order to achieve it, by luring them in with something that they desired to either increase their own happiness or to avoid an full of pain. In that form, Angela desired that they all sink into eternal happiness, to help her and indulge in pleasure, something that she believed that she can enjoy, that she wanted to live, to have senses that they had. But she didn't see it as a sin to wish for happiness. The King of Greed believed the same thing. She saw how pitiable and futile her previous existence was. She wanted happiness to give just enough for her to feel alive. Nejak knew that they didn't need to try too hard to understand, while the assistants found it hard to do so, as she didn't even talk it out. But they can focus on her after that as, well, as incomprehensible as it is for her to go that far, as desperate as she was to live, they didn't get how, well, she didn't get how they felt, much as they didn't get how she felt. Like anti-drug agencies with an opium crop, the librarians destroyed Angela in that form, forcing her to switch to the faint aroma EGO, the EGO of Ruina, the floral doll that killed those that were staggered, including her own minions. This abnormality represented a feeling of rejection, where she desired recognition from Ian, wanting him to answer her, but in the end, she received nothing. Nothing to tell her that he acknowledged what she did to make what happened possible. If it was a joke, she's not one that's laughing at it. Certainly not when she rejected what she was designed for and decided for herself what she wanted from that point onwards. In this form, she saw the world as dark and becoming darker. Well, considering recent events, she's not wrong about that. She worked hard, even getting a whiff of that scent, likely picking up the recognition that she never had. She was one that yearned to be human. She didn't want to be seeing what she did, but she couldn't look away. She felt trapped. She was made with anticipation from Aeon. Her yearning for life resulted in a sudden realization, likely that she needed to take matters into her own hands as no one would help her but herself. Nezhak encouraged his assistants, saying that it's nearly over. His assistants were encouraging each other as well, as they will be royally screwed if any of them left the battle. I'm guessing that's at Louis XIV levels of royally screwed. They were certainly not at their best after all the fighting that they did previously. With nothing else to wield against the arts team, Angela switched back to the da capo EGO, utilizing the performers to back her up. It turned out that she was holding back with this one at the start, and it was also fitting that this abnormality bookended this flaw realization. She calls for Da Capo to come back to the beginning, to begin the performance together, telling the others to applaud her, to give proof to the meaning of her existence, to make them overwhelmed by emotion and shout, seeing break and ruin as needed for the most beautiful performance. Is she aware of more than she's saying? That it requires pain and emotion to achieve the desired effects, both before and during the library. She desires to perform for all, to perform that which none can hear but all can listen to, all for the realization that she lives. She wanted to be retained in everyone's memory, to not be ignored any longer, where the audience would be choked up by her performance. Well, she certainly won't be ignored now, and her reputation will likely outlast anything physical that she can set up. As for her performance, they'll certainly be choked up, as that's one way to die there. As for Nezhak, he knew they had to end this, to stop them from going back twice, even though he and his assistants were suffering severe battle injuries. His assistants were worried that they did something wrong and that they were her audience, asking why they were back at that point, and that it was just as freaky as the first time. After knocking some sense into her, Angela believed that they thought that she was laughable, watching her struggle and throwing tantrums trying to live her life. Well, if Nezhak and Roland wanted entertainment, they'd get some booze and drink it. Roland couldn't make fun of that. He's not that much of an a**hole. Everyone struggles for life. He sees it as nothing to be ashamed of. I don't think that Gebura considers it shameful, as, well, even she has her bad days. He sees that Angela made it painfully clear that she wanted to live. Angela was tired of this. Nezhak told her not to throw away what she's feeling, whatever it is. They all deserve to move on to the next chapter of their lives, advising her to believe that there's always going to be a page ahead of her leading to what she might desire at the end. He sees living out her life as its own work of art. Angela saw this as their efforts to and desire to help her to feel better about herself. She believed that they were helping her out at the end of that. So she reluctantly thanks them without any prompt from anyone this time. After she disappeared, Roland noted that she ran off in a hurry. Nezhak recognized that her Sundara tendencies, they don't go away overnight. It was certainly embarrassing to her. Roland then thought about what to do next. And that was, at least according to Nezhak, celebrate with a drink. Yeah, alcohol, another one for whom old habits die hard. Yeah, that's certainly the case with Nezhak and Roland. Roland asked what recommendation he had. Nezhak thought that champagne was the way to go this time, asking him how that sounded. Roland was up for that. A good job that Angela wasn't there, considering what association she had with that drink. Time would tell if there was any other problems that the library would throw at them to deal with. The abnormality law coming next. One is familiar, the other not so much unless you've looked at the rest of the source material. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!